Are you like me, wanting to collect your favorite Pokemon but in their shiny forms? Well, in this guide, I'll be showing you all the different methods you can use to make that happen. I actually asked the Dystoria Discord what methods they mainly use, and today, I'll be turning those into a video so you can decide which one fits your playstyle best. We'll be going from the least popular to the most popular methods. I'll also be featuring tips and tricks at the end from well-known players in the community to help you out on your shiny hunting journey. Before we get into the list, let's first talk about catch combos. Catch combos are basically how many times you catch the same Pokemon in a row, and the higher your combo goes, the higher your chances are of finding a shiny. If you want to check your current catch combo, just type slash catch combo info toggle and this UI will pop up on the side. It shows the Pokemon you're currently hunting, your combo count, and your current shiny rate. There's also some extra info there, not super important for shiny hunting, but still good to know. Now, most players probably won't reach this, but the highest possible shiny rate is 116. Once you hit that, you're basically guaranteed a shiny or higher to spawn on you. Alright, so starting off the list, and honestly, this surprised me a bit. This is actually the method that no one voted for, which is the platform catch combo using P-Warps without cakes. I'm guessing the main reason for that is the lack of cakes, and I'll explain later why that's kind of a deal breaker for a lot of shiny hunters. So how does this method work? Basically, these platforms are designed to force specific Pokemons to spawn, usually ones in the common rarity. This is done by using a specific chunk and setting up certain conditions so that only a small pool of Pokemons can actually appear. A good example would be P-Warp Water Isle. It is located high in the air and they use string in the middle of the platform to force mostly air spawns. And since most air spawns there are Waterals, you're pretty much consistently encountering them. So, if you're hunting for a shiny Wattrel, for whatever reason, this is actually a really solid spot. Here's a list of the P-Warps with platforms you can check out. They're all open for anyone to use, so it's very beginner friendly. You're just a bit restricted as it's harder to get uncommon tiers or higher as these are all natural spawns instead of the quote unquote modified spawns. Alright, so for the next method, we're going to be focusing on Pokebaits, one of the two main ways to personally boost your shiny odds. First things first, you're going to need a campfire with a campfire pot on top. That's what you'll use to start cooking your Pokebaits. Now, for the base recipe, 1 honey bottle, 1 mushroom, and 1 wheat. That gives you 4 plain Pokebaits. But obviously, you don't want to stick with plain Pokebaits, because honestly, they don't do much. This is where seasonings come in, and this is where most of the magic actually happens. For each batch, you can add 3 berries, either all of the same kind or a mix of different ones. And this is where a bit of thinking comes in. When you open your inventory or the cooking pot, if you downloaded the Dystoria mod pack, you'll see the EMI search bar right below the UI. From there, I recommend just typing in berry to see all the available options. And yeah, each berry gives a different effect. If you want to know what a specific berry does, just hover over it and hold shift, and you'll see the effect under bait info. Now, we'll pause the berry deep dive here and come back to it later, but for now, this should be enough to get you started. So here, we're gonna be talking about fishing catch combo. But first, we need to cook some pokebaits to attach to our rods. When it comes to cooking, I'd personally recommend using 3 starf berries as your seasoning. This setup boosts your shiny odds for each fishing attempt by about 7 times. Now, you might be wondering, why not 9 times? That's because of diminishing returns. When you use multiples of the same berry with the shiny boost effect, which means it only applies to starf berries, golden apples, and enchanted golden apples. Once your pokebaits are ready, just attach them to your rod and head to any spot where you want to start fishing. From there, every Pokemon you fish up will immediately start a battle, and from that point, you can either catch or defeat it. And you can probably already see where this is going. You just keep fishing, catching your target Pokemon, and building your combo, until eventually a shiny shows up. One more thing, double spawns do affect fishing. So, if it's active, instead of pulling up one Pokemon, you'll actually fish up two at the same time, which helps speed up your combo a lot. Speaking of double spawns, it sounds pretty simple at first, but there's actually a lot more going on behind the scenes. So hopefully I explained this properly. Basically, the higher your catch combo gets, the higher your chances are of triggering a double spawn, all the way up to 100%. So yes, eventually you'll reach a point where every Pokemon you're catch comboing that spawns around you will appear in pairs instead of just one. Now, things get a little more complicated once Pokesnacks, baits, and shiny boosts get involved. When a double spawn happens from Pokesnacks and baits, the two Pokemon actually roll their shiny chances separately. The first Pokemon gets its shiny odds from the Pokesnack and the active shiny boost, but not from your catch combo. The second Pokemon, on the other hand, gets its shiny boost from your catch combo and the shiny boost. So, to make that easier to understand, let me give you an example. Let's say I'm currently catch comboing Fluttermanes. I've got a bunch of Pokesnacks placed around me, my double spawn chance is already at 100%, and there's currently a 3x shiny boost active on the server. Whenever a double Fluttermane spawns, one of them will receive a shiny odd from the Pokesnack and the 3x boost, while the other one will receive shiny odds from my catch combo and the 3x boost. So even though they spawn together, the game actually treats their shiny calculations differently behind the scenes. I was able to obtain this information from Minute Harvest, so if you'd like to read on what exactly his explanation was, feel free to pause the video. Alright, so taking a quick break from all the info dumping, let's move on to the next shiny hunting method, Safari Catch Combos. This is honestly one of the more simpler methods on the list. All you have to do is go to the Safari using /warp Safari, pay the small entry fee of $5,000, then choose which biome you want to start hunting in. And one important thing to note, the $5,000 fee has no time limit. Once you're inside, you can stay there for as long as you want and freely switch between biomes whenever you feel like it. There's also no need for Pokesnacks or Pokebaits here, since you can't place them inside the Safari anyways. So the method is pretty straightforward, you just run around and hunt for whichever Pokemon you want to catch combo. Dystoria also has a Google Sheet containing all the possible Safari spawns, along with each Pokemon's spawn odds. I'll leave the link to that down in the description below. Alright, so the second to the last shiny hunting method I'll be covering is platform catch combo, but this time with custom made platforms and Pokesnacks. This is actually the most popular method among the community, and honestly for good reason. It's one of the most consistent ways to catch combo biome specific or rare Pokemons. That said, it's also probably the most expensive method since Pokesnacks definitely aren't cheap. In my opinion though, this method is also the most fun and diverse because the seasonings you use can completely change depending on what Pokemon you're trying to hunt. Earlier, we talked about how to make Pokebaits, and making Pokesnacks is pretty similar, just with a different recipe. For one Pokesnack, you'll need 3 milk bottles or buckets, 2 honey bottles, 1 Vivichoke, and 3 hearty grains. I already explained earlier how to figure out which seasonings to use, so instead, I'll just show you an example of how I personally use this method. Right now, I'm catch comboing Fluttermanes. Fluttermane is both biome specific, only spawning in dripstone caves, and part of the ultra rare rarity tier. So, to make hunting them easier, I dug out a large area inside a dripstone cave and covered the floor with dripstones. Similar to P-Warp Water Isle, this helps reduce unnecessary spawns and makes the target Pokemon appear more consistently. Now, for my seasonings, I personally use 2 golden carrots and 1 Greppa berry. The golden carrots boost the rarity bucket by plus 3, while the Greppa berry encourages Pokemon that give special defense EVs when defeated to spawn more often, which Fluttermane happens to fall under. Now, I mentioned rarity buckets earlier. You can normally check this using /check spawn, but unfortunately, this command isn't available from the start. So instead, you can also use the Google Sheet made by Dystoria that shows every Pokemon spawn rates and the biomes they appear in. But basically, when you use /check spawn, it tells you which rarity tier your target Pokemon belongs to. In my case, Fluttermane is in the ultra rare tier, so by using seasonings that increase rarity by plus 3, I'm basically pushing the spawn pool closer towards the ultra rare encounters, making my Pokesnacks much more likely to spawn Fluttermane. And honestly, this is where the system gets really creative. There are so many different seasoning combinations you can experiment with depending on the Pokemon you're hunting. And once you understand how the system works, it becomes really fun to optimize. That said, this topic can get pretty complicated once you start diving into the best setups for specific Pokemons. So, if you're unsure, I'd highly recommend asking around in the Discord or in-game chat, since there's usually someone experienced enough to point you in the right direction. Last but definitely not least, and honestly the most important shiny hunting method in my opinion, is hatch comboing. Not only is it one of the best methods in the game, it's also one of the easiest methods to get started with. All you really need is a pasture, a hopper, a chest, and of course, two compatible Pokemon that can breed with each other. Setting it up is pretty simple. You place a hopper connected to a chest, then put the pasture right above the hopper, and that's basically it. After that, interact with the pasture, select daycare, then click open pasture in the top right corner of the menu. This opens up your PC, and from there, you can choose the two Pokemon you want to breed. One important thing to remember though, make sure there's enough space behind the pasture for the two Pokemons to spawn. Otherwise, the breeding setup won't active properly. Once everything is set up, you'll be able to preview the resulting Pokemon, confirm that the setup works, and even see the shiny odds for each egg. Now, of course, there are ways to further boost those shiny odds. Things like the Masuda method, breeding shinies with other shiny or higher tier Pokemon, and of course, active server shiny boost can all improve your chances. Now, you might be wondering, how long does each egg actually take to generate? And honestly, nobody really knows for sure. But the good news is that it usually doesn't take very long. And this is where things start getting really interesting. Pastures constantly generate eggs in the background, regardless of whether you're online, offline, near the chunk, or away from it. Do note though that each pasture can hold up to only 128 eggs. So technically, your farm is always working for you. The eggs themselves won't fully load into the hopper and chest until the chunk is loaded though. Because of this, a lot of players place their breeding farms far away and only load them in whenever a 3x shiny boost becomes active. That way, all those stored eggs gets loaded during the boost, massively increasing the chances of getting shinies from them. So when loading them to your chest, you can also see which eggs are shiny or higher with the following colors. If it's a yellow, then it's a regular shiny. If it's purple, then it's a shinier. And lastly, if it's black plus red, then it's a shiny yes. Someone also made calculations for shiny egg odds. Huge credits to Uku. You can pause to read, but basically what you need to know is that at 21 batches with full odds, you have a 90% for at least one shiny yes. And while it sounds like it would take forever, that comes pretty fast. And of course, you need incubators to hatch your eggs. Simply get the egg from your chest and put them in the incubator. And once they hatch, that's when your hatch combo starts. So how exactly does hatch comboing work? And why do so many people consider it overpowered? If you type slash hatch combo display, you'll be able to see which Pokemon you're currently hatch comboing. And down here, you'll notice that your eggs actually have a chance to upgrade when they hatch. Someone in the community actually listed all the possible rates, including the highest possible upgrade chance you can reach. According to that list, the maximum hatch combo is 5,000, which gives you around a 33% chance for a shinier upgrade, and about a 66% chance for a shiniest upgrade. There's also something called a double upgrade, which is pretty self-explanatory. For example, if you hatch a shiny egg and it triggers a double upgrade, it can jump from shiny to shinier to shiniest instantly. Now honestly, you don't really need to stress too much over all the numbers and math behind it. Hatch comboing is generally a much more passive shiny hunting method compared to the others. Your farm is constantly producing eggs in the background, it's very consistent, and over time, it gives you a really solid chance of eventually getting the shiny Pokemon you're after. And with that, I can finally say that I've covered all the shiny hunting methods currently possible in Dystoria. So before I do my final outro, let's go over some tips and tricks from some of the best players in the community, just like I promised earlier. Starting with the least voted method, here are some fishing catch combo tips from Terran Terrapagus. The first thing they mentioned is that it's actually better to use seasonings that decrease bite time instead of boosting shiny odds directly. So instead of doing what I did earlier with starf berries, they recommend using oran berries instead, since catching faster generally means more encounters overall. They also shared which fishing rod setup is ideal. According to them, you should craft a master ball rod, which can be made using a poke rod smithing template, any type of fishing rod, and a master ball. As for enchantments, they recommend using Lure 3 and Luck of the Sea 3. If possible, you should also try to get mending, although it's not really required. It just helps keeps your rod repaired over time while you fish. They also mentioned something I honestly didn't know before making this video. Fishing in a deep ocean biome while it's raining actually gives you rarer spawns. Next up would be Safari Catch comboing, and for this section, I'd like to welcome JT and Ishuni. JT brought up a lot of really good points, starting with something called the entity spawn distance. Basically, players have a certain area around them where Pokemon are able to spawn, and Pokemon outside of that area will eventually despawn, except for shinies and higher tier Pokemon. Knowing this, you can actually reload spawn areas repeatedly if your target Pokemon hasn't appeared yet by simply moving in and out of range. Since the safari itself is a pretty large area, it's highly recommended that you bring a mount Pokemon or even better, a flying Pokemon. This is especially useful because the slash fly command is locked behind the cosmic rank, which requires you to complete around 80% of the Pokédex. It's also worth mentioning that Ultra Beasts can spawn inside the Safari, with different biomes having different Ultra Beasts available. And there's also a legendary Pokemon that can spawn there with an extremely low chance, and that Pokemon is Cosmog. Now bringing in Ishuni, she talked about the ideal Pokeballs to use while Safari catch comboing. Normally, most people would recommend using things like repeat balls or quick balls, which are both solid choices. But one important tip she mentioned is that it's usually safer to start the battle first before throwing your Pokeball. Technically, you can throw Pokeballs without entering battle, but there's always a chance you accidentally hit the wrong Pokemon, which would instantly ruin your catch combo. You can reduce the chances of this happening by enabling hitboxes using F3 plus B, but honestly, it's still better to play it safe. There are also situations where other Pokeballs become really useful. For example, JT mentioned using fastballs for his current target, Cyclizar, since Cyclizar has a base speed stat of 121. Fastballs give a 4x chance rate against Pokemon with at least 100 base speed, making them extremely effective in cases like that. Lastly, we have platform catch comboing with cakes, and for this section, we've got Shinon, Felaclot, and Worst Builder 833. First off, both Shinon and Fela really wanted to make one thing clear. This method is expensive to set up. But at the same time, it's also one of the methods that can make you a ton of money in the long run if you really invest into it properly. Shinon also brought up the double spawn mechanics I explained earlier and how the shiny rates are calculated. But she mentioned a really neat trick that I honestly never thought about before. Instead of only relying on your platform, you can actually build up your shiny rate first, then head over to an area where your target Pokemon naturally spawns. Now, this doesn't work too well for rare Pokemon, but for common or uncommon Pokemon, this strategy can actually work really well. Fella also shared a platform size that they recommend, which is a 55 by 55 area, along with stacking cakes vertically to better optimize the spawning space. Then we have Worst Builder 833, who mentioned that it's generally better to use seasonings that attract specific EV yields rather than seasonings that attract Pokemon typings. For example, the Grepa Berry I mentioned earlier attracts Pokemon that give special defense EVs, which can be much more precise and effective for certain hunts. They also pointed out that the blocks surrounding your platform can influence what Pokemon spawns. For example, when you're using an iron platform, it can give more spawns such as the Iron Valiant. And lastly, they highly recommend always including at least one golden apple or golden carrot in your seasonings. They're definitely expensive, but according to them, they massively improve the efficiency of your Pokesnacks, making the extra cost worth it in the long run. And that's the end of the video. I'd like to give a huge thank you to everyone who helped me out and took the time to answer my questions while I was making this guide. This video honestly took quite a while to put together, not just because classes are starting again, but also because there was just so much information that needed to be simplified and organized properly. Even with classes starting though, I'll still try my best to keep uploading videos, especially since Scan has been teasing some massive upcoming changes to the server. So chances are, I'll probably be making another video soon, breaking down all of those updates once they release. But yeah, that's it from me. I hope you all have a great day or night ahead of you, and I'll see you guys next time.